Hey, welcome. This is the Stereoscope Podcast number 7. I'm Byron.
I'm Anthony.
And as you can see, we're in a new space. This is a studio that we're renting, which is really great for us. It really changes things up. It gives us...
Yeah. And obviously things are still under construction. This won't be where we shoot from now on. This is just a temporary situation.
Yeah, it's temporary.
Hopefully it's going to get even better, but I think this is already a huge improvement over my cramped little basement office.
Definitely. Like it seems like, and we'll be able to sort of play with stuff a lot more. We have a literal room to play now, which is, I think, really exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting. We're gonna have a lot of space and facilities.
And we have some new videos coming up that we're planning. We're not announcing anything yet, but I'm sure you'll see them relatively soon. And we're going to be utilizing that space to really sort of start putting out more stuff, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We haven't done a video in a while. Life got in the way, but like we've said, the podcast happens when we're not doing other stuff.
Yeah.
So, but
we can at least blame the last 2 weeks on COVID. There's that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Little viruses getting in the way.
I went to a Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, and hint, yeah, and I got COVID, which sucks, but it happens. But we have a bunch of stuff to talk about. We sort of rolled into this area of a bunch of new stuff happening right now. So let's just launch out of the gate with it. So we have the Canon EOS R5 Mark II. So it is the sequel. It is the follow-up. It is the successor to the original R5. We're obviously using the R5C, which is the cinema variant of the R5. Yeah, so the Mark II is it is a step up. There is not a huge amount of difference. It's got a 45 megapixel full frame, back illuminated stacked CMOS sensor. It has the built-in autofocus for the R5, or for the dual fisheye lens, much like the R7.
So interestingly enough, from Hugh's review, it doesn't work that well.
Really?
Yet. And of course this lens doesn't have autofocus.
Autofocus, yeah.
But yeah, apparently if you want good autofocus with a VR lens, use a 39mm on the R7.
Yeah.
It's not so much yet on the R5. Probably going to get fixed in a firmware update. But yeah, so it's there, but...
Yikes.
I would say the biggest thing to me, or the only thing that I'm pining for from this model, is the IS. I didn't realize it's digital IS that's enabled with the VR lens.
Yeah, so it's got, I noticed this, it's got built-in digital image stabilization that works in conjunction with the EOS VR utility. So you can click it on, click it off. I'm guessing... How do you think it's using internal gyroscope data in the camera, or?
Yes, that's generally how that works.
Okay.
Like with the other camera models, like other
the Evo. See, I was really excited when I learned about the image stabilization, because it means it's most likely going to be a feature going forward for the cinema variant as well, or any other.
It could. It'll be interesting to see. So the R5 has IBIS, but they remove it from the C version because it's not really compatible. So most of the IBIS stuff is actually designed for stills.
Okay.
And that's why they say it gives you 8.5 stops of stabilization.
Sure.
So that means you can slow down the shutter that much more and still get a steady image.
Okay.
So it's really more for stills and not that great. And so even Hugh's review of the digital IS for VR is you're still going to need a gimbal, but it helps with the little micro jitters.
Yeah.
So it's not earth shattering, but it's nice to have.
But I will say that cameras that have built-in stabilization that uses gyroscope data, especially because I think one of the things that sets the Insta360 Evo apart from other cameras in its class is that built-in stabilization really, really helps, even with a gimbal.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously professional shooting, you're going to need, footfall vibrations are huge when you move any sort of VR camera, and they go right up the tripod, they go right up the gimbal, and it's like somebody's taking your head and just shaking your eyes, which does not feel great. But I think it's a really interesting feature. I really hope that it comes to the platform in general over time, because I think it'll be a good addition. What else? It seems like the Mark II is a good choice for new shooters, because there are some features that it benefits from. Like, it's got the C-Log 2, so it's got better dynamic range outside, or at least the C-Log formula can help iron out, blooming and stuff like that.
But it's also noisier.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's always, everything comes at a cost.
But it does not seem, well, it still overheats at 18 minutes.
Correct.
Without a fan. So in terms of, especially for, Hugh was saying that as long as you're planning your shots tactically, you can still get around it, but it doesn't give you the freedom to just roll with it, and especially for things like, we couldn't use the Mark II for the podcast. It wouldn't work unless we had the fan. And how audible are the fans, like, in other devices? Does it?
I mean, it depends on the camera. It's curious on the R5 II, because it's like a battery grip add-on that adds a fan. So who knows how loud that's going to be. It's obviously inaudible on the R5C. I mean, you can hear it with your ear, but it doesn't seem to ever become a problem with footage. But I've, for instance, my Blackmagic cameras, you can hear it a little bit. FS7 can't hear it at all. So it just definitely depends. But clearly critical.
It also looks like you can swipe around on the touchscreen.
That's pretty sweet.
That is actually pretty cool, because we have run into some situations where it doesn't really give an accurate portrayal of what you're looking at.
Right, you're looking at like the fisheye version of things.
Yeah, an unstitched version. So it's
doing. We're having to do this right now.
Exactly, and so it's bloomed. Everything in the center of the frame mostly looks good, but if you have anything on the extremes,
the distortion.
You have to plan for the distortion when you're framing your shot. But this gives you an ability to sort of swipe around, and I'm guessing you could probably, I wonder if you'd be able to put that out to a monitor. You wouldn't be able to swipe around, though.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you can do it on, just for to speculate, on the R5C, I can send the zoomed image out to HDMI and still pan around on the.
Oh, so you could
so
swipe your.
It's possible you could do that. Like where you still use
that would be
touch
very
screen,
useful. Yeah, that would be very useful. Yeah, but right now it seems like if you're a dual shooter, this is probably a good option. But if you're primarily,
I would like it as a B camera to us.
Yeah.
There's definitely some benefit to that, especially with the IS and other little things like full-size HDMI. That's pretty nice. That is nice.
Yeah, not having to rely on mini HDMI.
Yeah, we have to use a little adapter to protect our baby port.
All right, I think we can probably move on here. All right, so our next topic is, and this is an interesting one because we've talked about these devices before, and at first they seemed dubiously relevant.
Yeah, a little hokey maybe,
but they seem to be getting both better and more relevant for our interests. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I think there's something that I think the larger community is sort of becoming more aware about, and supposedly they're getting a lot more usable. So we're talking about the Xreal Ultra and their new device that they added to it recently, the Beam Pro, which is a add-on device to the video glasses. So the Xreal Ultra are video glasses that you can plug into any like HDMI capable device. It has both a 3DOF and a 6DOF mode, but the 6DOF mode is only available when using an external device that can run it effectively. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. And the reason why I think this is very interesting for us, especially with this new Beam Pro edition, is that the Beam Pro works as its own standalone computing device. It's effectively just a smartphone that they, so you don't have to use your battery of your own smartphone. So you have a secondary device, and it's got built-in video out, but also it's got stereo cameras on it. And we talked about this very briefly before, but now that it's out, supposedly it's actually fairly useful.
Cameras a little further apart. They're 50 mil apart, so it's a little closer. I think now, too, there's less skepticism about it since the iPhone can pull off a decent thing really close together. So I think a little bit more.
And they're the same cameras this time. Instead of two separate.
Helps.
Yeah, so you don't have to, worry that one is blurry, one eye is blurry.
Yeah. And for a couple $100, it seems like a pretty...
It seems, and I'm interested because I think video glasses are one of those things that we've always sort of talked about in media, and this is the most literal interpretation of it that I've seen. Mind you, you have to remember that these things have much smaller fields of view than your traditional, like the Quest 3. Like the effective field of view is only about, 50 degrees or less compared to, 110 with the Quest 2 or Quest 3, that is. The addition, but because each eye is separate, you can still watch stereo content. So part of the reason why it's interesting that they added these stereo cameras is now you can take spatial videos, you can consume, iPhone spatial videos, but you can also shoot your own and then immediately see them in your headset. In fact, you can see them while you're shooting them, which I think is really, really cool. And it's just putting another stereo device into the market that is less, it's just a point and shoot.
Yeah. It's much cheaper.
Much cheaper,
So it makes it more accessible. And, for a media consumption device, what seems to be, because I'm not a big Google, I'm not an Android user, but like the fact that it has, all your Play apps are available in the glasses through the X-Beam Pro.
Is really useful.
That's really cool.
I think that's very cool. And I think they've got an HDCP pipeline, so you can watch, and this is also relevant because we're going to also talk about effectively video glasses next as well, but with the Quest 3. You can watch HDCP protected content, so you can watch Hulu, you can watch Netflix, all that stuff right off of this device because there is a handshake and there's an HDCP handshake to make sure that goes through.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a big problem for these types of devices because not all of these devices are capable of that, as you'll see in our next segment. I think this is really interesting. I would love to get my hands on this device just to play with it, to see what it's capable of. Xreal, if you're listening. Because I think it's heavily relevant, and I think we're going to see more devices like this than less over time. And especially if they end up being somewhat successful. And the thing is that after my experience with the next segment with the Quest 3 HDMI link, I'm a lot less skeptical of this technology than I used to be. I think the Quest is a very interesting implementation, and I think they probably there's a lot of benefits in the way they're implementing it, but I haven't tried this, and now I'm really interested to see what this version of is capable of, because this one is so shockingly usable. Oh, and the other thing is that these devices are sort of mimicking, the Xreal Ultra and Beam Pro is mimicking some of the functionality of like the Apple Vision Pro and the Quest 3, because you're able to anchor monitors, you're able to put monitors up, and they're sort of hinting that you can do productivity features. I am a little more skeptical of productivity with such a limited field of view.
And limited resolution.
And limited resolution as well.
It'll be very interesting to see how good it actually looks in person.
Yeah, I mean, supposedly they're using OLED screens in the Ultra glasses. So if they can get that resolution down, they're definitely going to have the screen fidelity, though. When you're bouncing light through a bunch of mirrors and stuff, I don't know how much light you lose with OLED, but anyways, because productivity, I have tried it on the Quest 3 just by itself, and I can't imagine that it's as usable with a smaller field of view, because it's barely usable with a huge field of view. And with that, we'll move on to the next little bit. So Quest 3 HDMI link. This sort of came out of nowhere about a week and a half ago. Meta just posted about it in a blog post on their website, and then the app was out, and you could download it right away. And so at first I was like, what is this? Is this like I didn't really understand what it was until I saw some Reddit posts about it. And then I realized, like, oh, this is... at first I thought it was a dongle. Like that Meta themselves were releasing a dongle in conjunction with an app. That's not the case. I think that's something that they should think about doing, especially to make sure that, quality is high and that type of thing. Or at least partner with some sort of manufacturer to make a spec'd out version of it that meets all
optimized, and
also maybe to get a HTTP handshake. So anyways, Quest 3 HDMI, I bought a dongle. It's called Guermock. I don't know. It's one of these
Amazon brands,
drop shipping brands, that, it's got 15 letters,
words,
way too many consonants. So I got it overnight, shipped, and initially, what you're seeing here is some footage that I shot with my the pass-through cameras on my Quest 3. So this is just being recorded in headset, just with the basic. This isn't any like hacky recording. This is the built-in
live
recording.
and uncut.
Yeah, live and uncut. Though it is cut, but so I tested it out. Initially, I tested it with my Xbox, because I have an original Xbox that sits fairly close to my couch, and I have a long, 8-foot HDMI cable that I plugged in, and I plugged it in, and it immediately just worked. And 3 to 5 milliseconds of latency. It was latency that was not perceptible to me in any meaningful way, which I was initially very shocked at. And also the quality of the image, despite the fact, so I have to, there are some caveats here, is that I have a HDMI adapter for my original Xbox that is a fairly high quality HDMI adapter that I bought, that was initially came out 5 years ago. It was called the Chimeric Systems adapter, and there are other options now, but this was the first HDMI adapter for the Xbox. I also have something called the M Classic, which is a HDMI upscaler for 480p and 720p content that also adds a little bit of built-in anti-aliasing. I think it's just like the most basic form of anti-aliasing, and it makes it look a little bit sharper, a little bit cleaner with anti-aliasing. Anyways, so ported in the Xbox, and it just worked brilliantly, and I'm sort of shocked at how good it works. And then, so as you can see, I fired up Silent Hill 2, and then I was like, I'm showing you that you can also go into not just pass through, but you can go into like virtual reality environment. So you can plug in this HDMI link into any HDMI source, and it just sort of works with some caveats, and I'll get to that. But you can affect the brightness, so you can go into a virtual environment or your pass-through environment and just black everything out, which is really cool. You can You can curve the screen. You can make it larger. You can move the window around. You can resize it, which I think is really fantastic. Mind you, you're always going to have, because you're linked to an HDMI source, there is a little bit of, canting to one side from the video source. You can also see here, I'm changing the aspect ratio because Silent Hill 2 does not natively support widescreen, so it's being stretched. But on the M Classic, there's a little aspect ratio adjuster thing.
Yeah.
So going to 4:3 here. I don't know. I think this is a really interesting use case. It sort of makes it sort of ends up becoming the same class of device as the video glasses.
Yeah, which kind of makes the Quest, it's like this gateway drug, really, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
'cause it's they're slowly making it like the Swiss Army knife for $5.
Absolutely. Like, in terms of like, the Quest is now becoming all of the things that we thought virtual reality was going to be in the 90s.
Yeah.
One thing I want to mention here is that when I first booted up the HDMI link, I wasn't getting audio, but that's because it was outputting Dolby Digital.
Yeah.
And
It's not supported.
it's not supported. It can do Dolby Surround, which is like 4-channel. Dolby Digital is 5.1.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I switched up the game. I started playing Need for Speed Most Wanted just to see what the latency was like. And honestly, if I can play this game, then you can play anything, really.
Yeah.
Because this is one of those games, sub-millisecond latency is required to play it.
Yeah.
It started getting me thinking about what the HDMI link could have other purposes for. Like, I think it could be really useful for video production. Like, you could have, an output of a camera and put it in a 100-foot screen, and it's 1080p and it's really good quality. You could get up there, you could pixel peep.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to play with. Can you do more than 1080, or is it
Currently, you can only do 1080 60, but it outputs. So you can input 4K, but it will output a 1080.
Interesting.
Because I had seen some other videos that showed that they were doing higher than 4K sources or higher than 1080p input, but still getting a video out. So it's downscaling.
Still might be useful.
Yeah.
Just
I wonder if it'll do like a super sample type of situation.
Yeah.
It's effectively what it's doing. So I think it's really interesting. I think the ultimate killer use case for this would be for Meta to add some sort of stereo mode and some sort of like VR 180 mode, so that if there was a device that could output a stitched video source, then just turn on VR 180 mode and you've got live in headset preview of a VR camera. Because currently there is no plug-and-play solution for that.
Well, yeah, that's even remotely affordable.
Well, that's not plug and play. You have to start a server to render it, and it's been a big problem for us, and it continues to be a problem for us because the only solution that we found is, what was it, $1,000? It was like $500 a month or something like that?
It was $350 something a month. I was like, oh, that's not too bad. And I was like, oh, it's a month. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So
it was a similar
unless
live
you're a professional production with a big budget, like, that is just out of the question, pretty much.
Well, and it's like, they have a watermarked version. So I was like, well, that's cool. The watermarked version destroys the stereo. So
it destroys your ability to see the stereo effect.
So like, if it was a stereo watermark, fine. I could work with that, but you can't even really test it with the watermark that they have on there. So it's a real bummer. I wish they would come out, like, it's incredible what they're able to do, like live grading and all that stuff on the fly. But I'd love
it's impressive. It's incredibly impressive software, but it is just not accessible for anybody who's not a legitimate has a legitimate budget.
Yeah. Like it'd be amazing. Assimilate if you're ever watching this. Like a stripped down version that just does the thing that we need for like $100.
The live preview is
like
literally
like,
all we want.
That's yeah.
Offer it as a standalone for like, I don't know, $50 a month.
Something.
Even that is more reasonable than 300, you know?
Yeah.
Or a one-time license of 500 for just the live preview mode would be amazing.
Yeah.
Anyways, there is one thing I want to mention, is that I eventually got my Switch hooked up, as you can see. But if you're going to use the HDMI link for Quest, you have to, there are a couple caveats. You have to get a pass-through USB-C connector because the Switch will not output video unless it is getting power. So you have to get an HDMI that has a pass-through on the HDMI side from the USB-C out, or else it won't detect it as what it thinks is a dock. The other thing is that you have to use a controller because when the Switch is connected to what it thinks is a dock, it does not accept inputs from the Joy-Con. So you have to have a third-party controller or a Pro controller or something, or you have to undock the Joy-Cons from the Switch. Yeah. So it makes all these things a little bit fiddly, and you're going to have a bunch of wires connected to your head. You can see later in the video that I've got an adapter to the USB-C adapter to the Nintendo Switch dock connected to a power bank. So I'm looking like RoboCop over here.
After he got shot.
Yeah. Also, I tried playing YouTube. It didn't output sound. I don't know why. It outputted video, but no sound.
Interesting.
And then later on, I tried to play Hulu, but it did not accept HDCP content. So it would boot Hulu, but it would not pass through any video, which is why I think that Meta should come up with their own solution, because a lot of Meta's issues right now is that they don't have access to video apps.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I would assume for HDCP, like, really just disabling the ability to screen record should satisfy all parties involved.
Yeah.
But, I don't know.
I mean, literally the way that I did this was screen recording, and that's probably a big problem for the studios.
Exactly. That's why they wouldn't want it.
But there's got to be some way around it. And now, but here's the thing is, if you got DVDs, you're golden, baby. You know, like if you have a big DVD collection and you want to pass it through, and you can watch your DVDs. Blu-rays are probably no-go because they're HDCP content protected.
Yeah.
But some aren't. So I don't know. It might work.
Yeah. Well, it's a nice beginning. We'll see where this goes.
Yeah. But I was pretty impressed, honestly. I thought it was a good implementation.
Like, I'm intrigued by the feature. I don't really have a use case for it.
My use case is actually like playing retro games, playing my Xbox. I have another device. It's called the LG Cloud, which is sort of like a Switch, an Android-based Switch device. And it's got a USB-C out, and it just works. You don't have to pass any power through it or anything. And it's got like remote play from my PS5, so I can play my PS5, my Xbox Series S, here's the other thing we didn't even talk about. This would be excellent as a monitor for your PC.
That's the kind of thing I was thinking about. Is like just
because zero latency,
1080p,
60
and
content.
you can sit back, I guess, and just
if you had like a laptop on, you could game with this.
Yeah.
Like play like a first-person shooter like Call of Duty, or I play PlanetSide 2, and you can't have lag in that game because it's all very Twitch mouse. And the problem with a lot of the current on like screen solutions is that it's almost all wireless, and you're getting latency, and also connecting there aren't the options. Like virtual desktop works pretty well, but like Moonlight does not work particularly well with the current interface on the Quest 3. You have to sideload it, that type of thing. But using this as a monitor would be primo. Anyways,
Cool stuff.
all we've got for that. And then the last thing of the day, this sort of just launched just a couple days ago, so it came out right as we were getting ready. And so the Pico 4 Ultra just came out or was announced by Pico. It is currently only available in China, but there was a leak from a South Korean manufacturer, and it's not currently available in South Korea. So there is some speculation that because of the South Korean leak, that they may be trying to go for a global launch.
Right. Yeah.
You can get it in Europe, you can't get it in the United States.
Yeah. There still might be huge roadblocks to specifically the U.S. because we've taken a stand against ByteDance. So
the United States is terrified of ByteDance as a company, which, just like Meta, there are some weird concerns about privacy and that type of thing.
Yeah.
But, it's like, we're okay with Americans spying on us, but not the Chinese.
Yeah.
And especially when you put a bunch of cameras on a device and start scene meshing and scanning your living room. So now there will, I'm sure, be people complaining that the Chinese have floor plans to every house in the United States.
That's the key to world domination.
Yeah,
what my living room looks like.
Yeah, know exactly where I keep my blender. But the specs are pretty impressive. It's not a huge upgrade from the Pico 4, but there are some very key things that I think are very good tactical upgrades. So it's got the Snapdragon XR2 Gen 2, which is the same processor in the Quest 3. Sort of curious why they didn't do the Gen 2 Plus, but probably a lot more expensive.
And or power hungry. I'm not sure about that chip, but
yeah,
oftentimes
thermals,
that little extra is
thermals in that form factor are definitely nothing to balk at.
And it's a great chip as it is, so it's like I can see why.
Honestly, the Quest 3, I'm
not hitting problems with
it. It continues to impress me over time. They jumped up from 8 gigabytes of RAM to 12 gigabytes, and that makes a lot of sense because it seems like with these other features, I'll just go on and then we can talk about. They upgraded to two 32 megapixel cameras for perspective correct pass through with low distortion. So their claims are that it has a better pixel per degree for the pass-through cameras than the Quest 3. As good as the Quest 3 pass-through cameras have already gotten, I mean, you saw the footage that I recorded on my headset. Decent.
Yeah.
It seems like they're trying to target Apple and the Apple Vision Pro for sort of a better pass-through experience. Because, I mean, as we've talked about, the pass-through cameras make the usability of the Quest 3 just so much better.
Yeah. And I think the fact that they've improved it over time means it's highly software driven.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that, like, without using the device, you can show all these videos, and even the Quest 3 looks much better in videos than it does in practice.
Yeah.
So I don't know how good Pico software is, right?
It historically it seems that they're not as good with software as Meta is, and that's gonna be a problem for them. But I did hear that they retooled internally, like they fired a bunch of people and then they like reclassified what their long-term goals were, and I think part of that was doubling down on their software stack. And they're going to need that going forward, especially if they're going to compete with Meta.
Yeah.
And especially with Apple, because Apple's software is dramatically better than even Meta's is.
Yeah.
It's got Wi-Fi 7, which is good for latency. It's going to bring that latency ceiling like way down, I guess. Wi-Fi 7 just generally is a very impressive implementation. It's got largely the same, it's slightly smaller field of view than the Quest, but It's 105 versus 110. I don't know. I think that's pretty similar. It's got actually better height than the Quest 3 does. And it's got 3D stereo video capture up to 2448 by 1536 at 60 frames per second. That is very interesting.
Yeah, but it is just stereo, not 180, right? Is it similar to the iPhone or like the X Beam, or is it?
I don't know. I wonder. I'm guessing that resolution sort of implies.
Yeah, exactly. It does sound like a square format.
Like a square format.
Yeah.
Though,
Which is cool. I mean,
it seems like it's slightly bigger on one side, so it's probably like a.
well, that actually would be consistent with 2 widescreen frames.
Oh
right?
yeah, good call. Yeah. That's a pretty decent resolution in 3D.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what it looks like. We've talked about how shooting with a camera attached to your head never seems intuitive. I have not yet seen it implemented in a way that is particularly good.
I'll never not think about Rick and Morty when I think about this idea.
Yeah, for sure.
I am not staring at you. I am a cyborg photographer. Just act natural. This is a candid shot. I don't require a camera, so sorry.
But it does seem that the Pico 4 seems pretty impressive. They sort of backed off for a while. They canceled the Pico 5, and I think they were just retooling their existing headset, and I think that's very smart. They got rid of the rings on the controllers. They're also releasing trackers.
The leg trackers.
The leg trackers.
That
I think
seems
these are
really cool.
And it's something that, especially for standalone, there's so many VR chat players that are just like obsessed with VR chat, and they'll spend just ludicrous amounts of money to get their perfect VR chat setup. And this seems way more intuitive. Just the new leg trackers, not only do they have IMUs that have gyrometers and accelerometers in them, but they also have 12 LED lights that are tracked by the downward facing cameras, which I think is why haven't we already seen this sort of situation? Like, it seems like a no-brainer, right?
I mean, I've heard of like developers and other like homebrew people like modifying controllers and strapping them to their feet to do this exact same thing. So it makes sense.
So it seems way more expensive than a Vive tracker setup, which, I don't mess with VR chat unless occasionally I'll take somebody and be like, hey, look at this crazy bullshit, look at this.
You're never going to want to do this again.
There's a bunch of furries over there. But I think it's good to have competition, even if it isn't going to wind up here. I know some European VR enthusiasts actually really love the original Pico 4, even the 3. It seems the general consensus is that the lack of the display port is a big hang up for a lot of people, but I mean, it doesn't seem like anybody's doing that anymore anyways, other than like Big Screen Beyond and I guess the PSVR 2 now. But yeah, it's good to know that Meta has competition, and I think trying to sort of square at Apple is a good tactical move, because
they're kind of, in some ways, they're the hardest target and also the easiest target because the price is so much higher.
Yeah,
like it makes
because
this
is going for $600, so it's a little bit more expensive than the Quest 3, but it's still less than a fourth the cost. Of
What was the internal storage on this? I know it was 12 gigs of RAM.
256 available in 256 gigabytes. It's interesting that they don't have a higher tier.
Yeah, that is interesting.
But the increase in RAM seems really important, because if they're going to be doing all these more they also announced that they have a much bigger productivity stack, and we're going to continue to see this, because it does seem that now that Apple's doing it and Meta has their implementation, that productivity is going to be a thing that people are expecting these
Yeah.
to do long term. And, you know, I actually have tried productivity in my Quest 3, and weirdly enough, it worked fairly well.
It's handy.
It's handy.
And it's interesting for these headset makers that are into games to go after productivity, because kind of Apple's only doing productivity and entertainment and not doing games thus far.
Well, and with Meta's sort of doing an interesting thing because they announced Meta Horizon OS. So now, and the assumption and sort of the announcement that they made implied that we'll have targeted headsets for different product like places in the market. Right. So like you'll have a fitness focused headset. You'll have a productivity focused headset that maybe doesn't have controllers, or a fitness minded headset that has better breathability and less weight to it. It just has, you know, controllers and a really slim profile, that type of thing.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And
it's like you could get carried away with market fragmentation again, which has not been great
that,
for Android.
And that is a big concern because Android devices already have notoriously bad market fragmentation. And I personally don't want... that becomes problematic really quickly. But I feel like with VR, there is a minimum spec standard that you sort of have to hit.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be good to see that. At least it'll be interesting to see what Meta's expectations are for minimum viable releasable, you know, specs.
Yeah. Which, I mean, but that's also like, it's what the market is willing to pay for too, right? So they're going to, it was confirmed, right, that they're going to do the 3S or whatever, the Quest 3S.
Yeah.
Is that actually confirmed? This is where we took a little too long of a break.
Yeah, we took a little too long of a break.
But like, it's basically going to be a Quest 3 with Quest 2 lenses and shit like that, right?
Yeah. I don't think it has literally been officially confirmed, but Meta Connect is next month.
So
we've seen pictures of it. They've been leaked. You know, it's definitely a thing.
It gets interesting because there's clearly a market for the processing power and the gaming ability, and not the lenses. Because for me, the lenses is huge, right? Like,
I don't understand the not using pancake lenses. That seems like the biggest barrier.
I'll never go back. Right?
I will literally never go back. That's why, I mean, I have a PS5. I have a PC that I could use the PSVR 2 as a PC or VR headset. But the fact that it has Fresnel lenses, I just am not interested in it at all.
Yeah.
But, you know, here's the thing is that the Quest 3S it's marketed for children. It's for children.
Right.
It's for children, and it's for people wanting to do fitness and don't care about, you know, they want something cheap or at least inexpensive.
Yeah.
And we'll see what Meta is planning at Connect next month, but it's for children. It's so that they can hit that $300 price point and sell
a lot,
millions of them. Yeah. Well, I mean,
interesting times though.
Interesting times, and I think that's really all we got today. Good one. I think we covered some good stuff. I like our new space. I'm enjoying it. I think it's a very natural.
Yeah, and just I don't know, for me, just not being cramped in my little office.
Yeah, you spend so much time in that office.
At some point, I wish I could have turned the camera on and be like,
so we could see.
The camera was basically sitting on my desk, you know. I mean, like, you're having to duck under lights.
We can actually move the lights around here. You know,
totally different lighting setup. You know,
I think it looked great, honestly.
So I'm definitely excited to have this.
And I'm really excited for the space because I think it's going to help us output more stuff. I think we're going to be able to be more creative with how we light things. One of our ideas is to have a big splash screen on a cyc behind us.
Hopefully next episode we'll
be able to project our logo behind us during the entire thing, or
whatever's on this TV,
or whatever's on here, or even output, because we're working on sort of like a tech show where we can output the video from the hardware that we're featuring in that episode onto the psych, so we can get like a maxi view, sort of like that scene. And do you remember that movie, The Wizard?
Yes. God,
Where they go to the Universal Studios and play Super Mario Brothers 3.
It seems so cool when I was a kid.
Oh my god, it was amazing. I love the Power Glove.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
The biggest letdown.
Hey, and it's got Jenny Lewis in it too, so.
Yeah, so.
California.
Is that from that?
That's from that movie, because they drive by the
That's my
dinosaurs and
favorite
Palm
meme.
Yeah,
That's like,
oh,
was
it's so
it
good.
Anthony Kiedis
Oh, yeah.
writing his first song.
California! California!
Just pull over. Stay still, honey. It's okay.
California!
Would you pull over?
California! California!
I used to live in Palm Springs near those dinosaurs, and I used to drive by them once a week, pretty much.
That's funny.
Yeah. It's at a date that place has a date farm, and you can get date shakes at those dinosaurs.
Random.
Yep. All right. Thanks for coming, folks. This was a good one. See you next time. Stereoscope Podcast. We're out.